Welcome back. All right, so today I want to talk about the Vancouver Canucks. The Vancouver Canucks currently sitting outside of the playoffs. Depending on who you ask, they're outside of the playoff picture, or if you're a positive Canuck fan, you may believe they're in the playoff picture. I'm on the fence. I mean, their record's been good. I cannot deny that they have won 7 of their last 10. I do look at who they've won those against, how they've won those games, and I take it with a grain of salt. Now, December's been a relatively good month, and so they've been, and I'll get to it. They're 16, 15, and 3. They're currently 5 points outside of the playoffs, behind the wild card spots. Both Seattle and Colorado tied at in those wild card spots, same amount of points ahead of Vancouver, just the 5 ahead. So, when a team's 5 points back, you can't say they're completely out of the hunt. Now, there are those that are going to watch this, they're going to say, well, they are. But they're 7 and 3 in their last 10. And there are teams ahead of them, including Seattle, who do not have that kind of record. Calgary doesn't have that kind of record either. Now, Calgary's trying to turn things around. It's possible Calgary does. They had the good road trip through California. They beat Seattle last night. Of course, squashed in between there, they had that loss against Edmonton as well. Now, the December wins for Vancouver show that it's nice to see them winning games against teams they should, but that's generally been what this is. First off, it was a win against Arizona, took extra time. Win against Montreal, took extra time. Win against San Jose, also extra time. Calgary, yep. Seattle, absolutely. So this is the problem. That's not really something that's sustainable long term. Against Edmonton, they win in regulation, and against San Jose, they win in regulation. So the last 2 games have been regulation wins. They're trending in the right direction. Bruce Boudreau saying they're starting to believe in themselves. They're feeling good about themselves. Good. That's excellent news if you're a Canucks fan. But when you've got wins against those teams, generally those are teams that you should be beating anyways. And then you look at the losses this month. They lose against Florida, Minnesota, Winnipeg, and St. Louis. All of them regulation losses. The combined score in those 4 games, 18-3. So for the Vancouver Canucks, when they lose big. And this has been a problem. The game against Florida, they weren't in it. The game against Minnesota, they weren't in it. Same with Winnipeg and St. Louis. So these are the losses that cause me to have a bit of a pause before I'll say, yep, oh yeah, no, these guys should make the playoffs. Now tonight they're at Winnipeg. That's a big game. Right? If they can beat Winnipeg, fine, but they did have the embarrassing loss against Winnipeg this month already. And then on Saturday, to round out December, they go to Calgary. If they can win both of those games, they put themselves in a good position, but they have to keep winning. And January is brutal. So they start off with 2 home games. They're at home against the Islanders on the 3rd, and then against Colorado on the 5th. Now, the Islanders, middling team, but are they a team that can beat Vancouver? I think they can. Colorado, by January 5th, you got to think they're going to have somebody back, right? For Colorado, they've been gutting out some wins in a similar fashion as Vancouver, using extra time where they need to and whatnot. Then on the 8th, they go to Winnipeg as the start of a road trip that could decide what management does. So if you're looking for when Alvin's going to decide, that's it, I'm going to sell, this road trip could tip those scales. They go to Winnipeg on the 8th. Pittsburgh on the 10th, Tampa Bay on the 12th, Florida on the 14th, and the next day they're in Carolina. So that is a 5-game road trip that if they win 3 of those 5 games, we're going to be talking about them being in the hunt. If they lose 4 out of those 5, we're going to be talking about how, okay, that's it. Now's the time to look into selling. And I don't think there's a rush to sell. There's already been a lot of talk about general managers not having that cap space, right? Then they come home, they play against Tampa, so that's not going to be easy. They get Tampa twice in a week. They've got a home game against Colorado on the 20th, Edmonton on the 21st, and then it gets a bit easier where it's Chicago on the 24th. They go to Seattle the next night, and then on the 27th, they're at home against Columbus before the All-Star break. So by the time we reach that All-Star break, we should have a really good idea of where this team's at and whether or not they're going to be able to move forward. Now, one thing that could decide things for them is their penalty killing. Their power play's been good. 26.32% is excellent. But their penalty kill at 68% is woefully below water. This is a team that is not getting the results on the penalty kill that they desperately need. So for Vancouver, the injuries are part of it. So you've got Demko who's out. Now, Demko wasn't having a great season at the time he got hurt. Hopefully with the time off and healing up, hopefully he comes back and he's his old self again. Dermott going through concussion and all of that. He's close to a return, And so we'll see whether or not Dermott makes a difference when he makes his debut. Dermott's not on this part of the board because he hasn't debuted yet this season. And I don't think he's part of the discussion about who they keep or get rid of yet. Then you got Pearson, who's been out for quite some time. He's only played 14 games, so he's missed 20 so far. Pearson, good player. Does he have value on the trade market? We may find out at the deadline. And then you've got Pullman. Pullman, of course, ongoing injury problems. And there's questions about when, if he returns, and all of that. Now, if you're looking at this from the big picture perspective, all of this is window dressing. This is a team that's not built to win, and they need to tear it down. And I've heard that a lot. The reality is, tearing this down is easier said than done. And then it's a matter of what you're going to replace the players you're tearing this down with. Are they first rounders? Are they prospects? Are they NHL ready players, or a mix of? So Pettersson leads this team in scoring. In 32 games, he has 16 goals, 26 assists for 42 points. Absolutely phenomenal year for Pettersson. He makes $7.5 million. That's the cap hit anyways, until 2024. He's a restricted free agent in 2024. I guarantee you the Vancouver Canucks want him to have an 8-year extension. As soon as he is allowed to discuss it, I'm sure they'll sit down and discuss it. The thing is, with the way Pettersson is playing, there's a Peterson down here, though. That's going to throw everything off. But the way Pettersson's been playing, you can argue he's worth $10 million a year. You can absolutely make that argument. His stats back it up. He's on pace for over 100 points. He should be a $10 million a year player. Then, of course, there's Horvat, and all the discussion around Horvat. In 34 games, he now has 26 goals, 13 assists for 39 points. His cap hit of $5.5 million is a bargain for how he's playing this year. He's an unrestricted free agent next summer. Now, the problem is this. You're trying to negotiate with Horvat. Horvat knows Miller's getting $8 million. Likely is going to ask for more than JT Miller. You'd like to provide that for him, wouldn't you? But the Canucks in cap space, according to Cap Friendly, for next season have $13,593,750, which is fine. But you consider how many players are on expiring contracts, you got to replace those players. So it's not just a matter of going, okay, out of $13 million, we can give $9 million to Horvat, take the other $4 million and see if we can get Kuzmenko to stick around and we're done. You wouldn't be, because then you're going to have a roster where you've got some holes in it and you don't have any cap space to plug that up and make sure that you got a good team. Kuzmenko at 33 games, with 33 games played, 14 goals, 16 assists, 30 points. He was a healthy scratch in that other one. $950,000 contract, the entry-level deal, 1 year. His agent has already sent out tweets that are basically along the lines of, you can tell he's counting up the money for Kuzmenko, and he's worth it. Kuzmenko, we can have the argument about him getting all the tip-in goals, but he's still tipping them in. Horvat and Kuzmenko, two are the best in the league at tipping goals in the net. And so I think the Canucks would ideally like to keep both Horvat and Kuzmenko. But if we have the argument about Kuzmenko being worth, $4 million a year? So if we look at, I guess a comparable might be Mikheyev. Mikheyev's making $4.75 million. I cannot make an argument that Kuzmenko is worth less than Mikheyev. And keeping those two players on the roster, I think, is important, because you want Podkolzin to eventually become a top player as well. And the discussion about Podkolzin's still out there and to be had. But, if it's $4.75 million for Kuzmenko, and let's just say that's the number, it really eats into what you're able to offer Bo Horvat. And then, of course, you got JT Miller. 34 games, 13 goals, 17 assists, 30 points. Nobody expected 99 points from Miller this year. It's been a little bit more of a struggle offensively for Miller this month. The good news is the Canucks have got wins in those games. It is an $8 million cap hit for Miller that kicks in next summer and runs through 2030. Now, we've talked about the cap going up, and eventually the cap's going to explode. It doesn't look like it'll be next summer. Although I would think, too, that maybe the Canucks are gonna hedge a little bit and see if that $1 million raise in the cap is going to be it, or if there might be some room for more. Because think about it, if there's a raise of let's say that the cap goes up $3 million, well, then they'd have $16 million. You can afford Horvat and Kuzmenko for $16 million. We can still have that discussion about whether or not they can fill the rest of the roster, but it's there. Then there's brock Boeser, whose name's been in no, not yet. Quinn Hughes first. So Quinn Hughes in 30 games, 1 goal, 28 assists, 29 points. I'm so glad he finally got a goal. $7.85 million cap hit until 2027. Quinn Hughes is the best defenseman the Canucks have ever had. All respect to guys like Lume and Jovanovski, and if you go back far enough, you've got Lidster, and you've got Dennis Kearns, and you've got Hallwards, Sneps, anybody you want to throw out there, I would say that Quinn Hughes is the most talented defenseman the team's ever had. But if they decide to make him available, it doesn't horrify me because I think it would take a lot to get him. So when Devils fans are, well, they could get Quinn Hughes, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be an expensive deal if that were to go through. And historically, the Canucks have done well in trades with the Devils. Historically. Not always, but historically there was a Kirk McLean and Greg Adams that came over to Vancouver for Sundstrom. That wasn't a bad deal at all. Mikheyev, 31 games, 12 goals, 10 assists, 22 points, $4.75 million cap hit till 2026. The asterisks are for players that have been brought in by the new management to show that I think they have a good idea for what's going to work. Mikheyev has been excellent for Vancouver. And really, honestly, almost anybody with an asterisk next to the name, notice I'm saying almost, has fit in pretty well. Brock Besser in 26 games, 6 goals, 14 assists, 20 points. He has $6.65 million as his cap hit until 2025. This is the one that I think if they could move it, they would. I think this is the one that if there was a taker, I think they would move that. That $6.65 million would then take this number up to $20 million, and then you can start working on the blue line, and you can sign Horvat and Kuzmenko. Of course, if you're going to move Besser, you're probably going to have to take money back. I say probably as if like there's any doubt. But that's the one that I think they'd like to move, as well as Garland. Now, Garland, when he's playing well, his contract looks really good. In 33 games, 5 goals, 11 assists, 16 points. But right now, for that 5 goals in 33 games, the $4.95 million cap hit does look expensive, and that runs until 2026. So it's not as easy of a contract to trade now as it might have been last summer. So if they'd looked at moving Garland, it might have been easier. I'm just saying might, because the market has been... It's been rough when it comes to guys making around $5 million a year, right? So Garland may end up being a guy who gets sacrificed as well in order to keep Horvat and Kuzmenko. And I wouldn't rule out a buyout for some contract on this team, even if it means that penalty, the cap penalty and everything, if it gets them that extra money so that they can sign their players and keep them. There's a good team here, and I think that's the thing with Vancouver. This isn't a bad team, and it's not an old team. It's a team that I think they need a little bit more speed, a little bit of an infusion of skill, and definitely some help on the blue line. So Ekman Larsson's part of that blue line, 34 games, 1 goal, 14 assists, 15 points. His cap hit for the Canucks is $7.26 million until 2027. 2027 is what's going to scare off most GMs when it comes to that contract. The Ekman Larsson Garland combined cap hits of $12 million. That's problematic. And it's problematic not because Garland and Ekman Larsson aren't good players. They are, but because, as I've said many times over, cap space is gold. And so when you trade out contracts, you bring these guys in and you sign them, or in the case of Garland, you sign him and you take on most of the Ekman Larsson contract from Arizona, it puts you in a position where it's tougher to keep other players. So basically, I keep seeing, JT Miller's meant we have to lose Bo Horvat. Not really. I would say that the Ekman Larsson-Garland trade is still causing those ripples. I don't blame Miller on that one at all. Now, Luke Schenn is a popular trade target, and there's a reason. 34 games, 2 goals, 8 assists, 10 points for him. $850,000 contract, and it expires this summer. So the fact that it expires this summer, he's a pure rental, and there's going to be a lot of teams that would want Schenn. He's played very well for Vancouver. Odds are, wherever he goes, he'll be a third-pairing defenseman. Might even end up being a number 7 if he goes back to, say, Tampa, right? But he could get Vancouver a decent return. I do worry that maybe Canuck fans could get too excited about what they could get back. This is a fan base that's done that before. I still remember, let's see, it was Ballard. Was it Ballard, Booth, and a first? That was when they were pretty good, too. But yeah, there was always the trade offers, and it always involved Keith Ballard, and it's like, guys, teams know about Ballard at this point, and I think there's still that portion of the fan base that would look at Luke Schenn and say, well, he should net us at least, and might throw in like a prospect and a draft pick. I think they'll be disappointed in the return for Schenn. There are times where I look at the return on a player and I think you might as well have held on to him and tried to sign him if you couldn't. And I mean, if you can't come to any kind of an agreement, then I get trading him, but you should at least try. So Höglander's one that always gets talked about in Canucks circles. 25 games, 3 goals, 6 assists, 9 points. He has an $891,000 cap hit. He is a restricted free agent this coming summer. He's not due for a big raise or anything. Höglander works really hard. He works really hard. He's got some speed, and he's young. I don't know how much finish is there. I don't know if Höglander's ever going to be a 20-goal scorer. His work ethic is fantastic, meaning that if he got moved to, like, Nashville's a team that comes to mind for me as a place where he might be able to thrive. Of course, Nashville fans will watch this and say, you mean like Tolvanen? Which, fair, but Höglander, it does feel like he's a guy that could benefit from a change of scenery, that maybe it's just not going to work out in Vancouver. Myers, 31 games, 9 assists. The problem with him, of course, $6 million cap hit until 2024. Again, the rumors that the Canucks are making him available, well, yeah, of course they are. The problem for Vancouver is that you can't make that deal until you're sure you're not going to make the playoffs. I'm not saying that losing Myers means, suddenly they're not going to make the playoffs, but it just, you're honestly trading out Myers. You're probably going to have to add something, or you're going to take another contract back, and I don't know that gets the Canucks further ahead. It really could be rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Then you got Dakota Joshua, who's been excellent. 31 games, 6 goals, 2 assists, 8 points. $825,000 cap hit until next year, so till 2024. Now, I don't think we've seen from Joshua as much upside as we were told that there would be there when they picked him up. But yeah, he's been good. And honestly, I don't have a problem with him being on the roster. They have done a decent job of filling out the bottom six with players that don't cost a lot. And it feels like there's a little more offense from the bottom six with Vancouver than there used to be, which includes Sheldon Dries. 19 games, 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points. He's signed through 2024 as well. It's costing them $762,000 in cap. That is well worth it. So Dries, I think, has been excellent. He had a good year in Abbotsford last year. I'm glad he's playing for Vancouver this year. It's a good story. Ethan Bear, it was a rough start for him. I think he's been better lately. 24 games, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points. And apparently he's going to be playing with Quinn Hughes. A test you may have to be running out there anyways, because Luke Schen's going to be on his way out, and Schen's played with Hughes a ton. Bear in 24 games, 2 goals, 4 assists. His cap hit, $1.8 million. He's a restricted free agent this coming summer. And he's not going to get a big raise. He's going to be a player that the Canucks can afford to hold on to, and I think that's important. Whether or not he's top 4, I think, is neither here nor there. He's given them some decent play, and so it's really about the rest of this season right now, right? Then you've got Amon. Amon, the offense isn't there, but in 34 games, 1 goal, 4 assists, 5 points, he's been a solid fourth-line forward. One thing that's frustrated me with the Canucks has been a lack of patience with the bottom six, where they're switching out guys every year. And I understand, and people are going to say, well, their bottom six wasn't producing. But when you see a guy like Nick Dowd go to Washington and become one of the best fourth liners in the National Hockey League, it just feels like they don't give the guys enough time to really take that next step of development. So I hope that Amon, if they're going to stick with him, leave him the fourth line center for a couple years, and there may be a little bit more offense there. Pearson, 14 games, 1 goal, 4 assists, 5 points. His cap hits $3.25 million till next year, so 2024. I don't know how much interest there would be if Pearson was available at the deadline, but I would think that he will be available at the deadline. Because, again, you want to save as much money as you can to increase this number. Then you get Studnicka, has been very good for Vancouver since coming in. However, the offense, 16 games, just the 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points. $762,000 cap hit until 2024. He's a restricted free agent at that point. Lane Peterson has been very good since getting called up. 5 games, 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points. And it's one of those things, too, where you don't want to get too excited because you know that, guy comes up from the AHL, they can get that boost for those first few games. And then it's a matter of whether or not they can maintain it. For instance, Nason in Carolina has done a good job of maintaining it. But Peterson with the 3 points in 5 games and the cap hit of $750,000 this year, plus he's a restricted free agent at the end of the year, he's motivated to play well. The Canucks have him playing at times since his call-up. He's been on the top line with Pettersson, and it's worked. Then you got Podkolzin, 16 games, just the 3 assists. He's a restricted free agent in 2024. His cap hits $925,000. And I don't know that we're in bust territory with Podkolzin. I know there will be a lot of people who declare a player a bust. I don't like to do that, especially this early in their career. But yeah, Pods, it's been kind of an up and down experience for him at the NHL level. No goals in 16 games, and we'll see if he gets his game back in the AHL and then comes back up to the NHL and follows through on that potential that he has. For Stillman, since coming over in a trade, 3 assists in 20 games. His cap hit's $1.35 million until 2024. I don't know how long Stillman's going to be a Canuck, and I know that Stillman takes a lot of blame from Canuck fans, and it's understandable, but this is a blue line that is not fully healthy. This is a blue line that ideally would have Pullman and Dermott there, and we can have the debate about how much better that would make the blue line. I do like Dermott as a top 6 blue liner, and so Stillman's playing probably more minutes than one would hope. Burrows, 17 games, 2 goals. He's on league minimum, $750,000 for this year. Curtis Lazar, the offense has not been there. The effort has been. 24 games, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points. His cap hits $1 million until 2025. So the players who've come in, McCabe's been excellent. Joshua's been very good. Bear has picked it up lately. Amon, I think, has been a good, again, 4th-line player for them. You've got Studnicka, 4th liner, decent. But again, you might probably want more goals from that 4th line. Peterson, very good since the call-up. Stillman, it's still a work in progress. And then you've got Lazar, who again I think has been good, even though the offensive numbers aren't where you'd want to be. And again, even though it's a 4th liner, you'd like to see a little more scoring from there. Spencer Martin was expected to be the backup this year, but he's 11-5-1 already. What's interesting is he's only got an 886 save percentage. So the save percentage isn't great, and Martin's had some rough games. But, I mean, in the end, they've won 11 out of 17 decisions with him in the net. His cap hit's only $762,000 until 2024. So that's good. I don't know how long I don't know if he's going to play the whole 2 years in Vancouver. I don't know what's going to happen next season, but I think he stepped in, and his record's better than Demko's, who's 3-10-2 with an 883 save percentage. Demko signed for $5 million till 2026. So for Demko, we know he's going to bounce back. It's just a matter of when. He's gone through downbeats in his career before. He's always bounced back really well. And again, it's just a matter of when he comes back from injury, can he get back to being the Thatcher Demko he was last season? That's key if the Canucks are really going to make up the difference, and if they're going to start to win games against these better teams they play against this month. Delia, or the month to come. Delia's 2-0. He's been a good addition. 920 save percentage, makes league minimum of $750,000. That's just a 1-year deal for Delia, and I think he's been good. I think he's warranted enough of he's warranted more of a look, I would think, until Demko gets back. Maybe get him into a couple more games. So against Winnipeg, why not throw in Delia and then give the Saturday game at Calgary, give that one to Martin? Odds are Martin probably plays both. That's my guess. But at any rate, the Canucks are in this interesting position. They're not far enough out of the playoffs to really completely and fully tear it down. They're not close enough to the playoffs to be considered a buyer at the deadline. They don't have the cap space to be a buyer at the deadline, and other teams don't have the cap space to pick up the guys that they're probably going to be selling at the deadline. If Horvat goes, it really does hurt this team. Horvat's their face-off guy. He's their captain. He's one of the best players on the team. He's got 26 goals, which is the best on the team by 10 over Pettersson. And I don't know how you replace that. At the same time, Horvat's having a career year. Horvat's on pace for about 60 goals. I don't think he hits 60 goals, and that's kind of how a career year works, right? Where you see a guy who's, traditionally a 20, 25, maybe 30 goal scorer end up with a 50-goal season kind of out of nowhere. Gary Lehman's the one example that comes to mind just off the top of my head. And so for the Canucks, they're in this tough position too with Horvat, where they likely want to keep him, but you don't look at those 26 goals and pay him as if he's going to score you 100 points every year, as if he's going to score you 50 goals every year. With the JT Miller contract, just coming back to that for a moment, the $8 million a year, he's going to be old at the end of that contract, sure, but $8 million a year for the production you've gotten from Miller since he became a Canuck is not out of line with what he should get. This year his numbers are down a little bit. You know that's going to happen. But the reality is that now you have the Horvat situation, which you've got to figure out as well. It is not an easy deal for the Vancouver Canucks right now. I don't think there's an easy out. So I wanted to talk about this with all you fine people on the internet. we'll see if they can win a game against a really good team and if they can avoid these embarrassing losses. Because it's that 18-3 combined score that tells me that while the Canucks do have some good games and they do win in shootouts and overtimes, and that's a lot of fun and it's exciting, when they're off, they're way off. And they have to avoid those games. They have to be competitive every night, and they have to continue. If they can continue winning 7 out of every 10, they've got a chance. But if they can win 7 out of 10 in here, that'd be quite impressive. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. So the whole Schrödinger's cat thing, is it alive? Is it dead? What do you think? We don't really know, do we? Let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.